From Capitol Hill to Wall Street, this is Politics and Profits with your host, Rick Amato.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Rick Amato. It's time for Politics and Profits.
We follow the trends on Capitol Hill that lead to the profits on Wall Street. We expose the hard facts of what your elected officials are doing when you're not looking. And we show you how you can profit from their politics. The American dream is alive and well, and you can be proud to call America your home. And now, it's Rick Amato.
Well, needless to say, there's a lot going on in America. Never in our lifetime have we seen social unrest, an election year, a pandemic, let's add hurricanes and wildfires, all happening at the same time. And of course, politicians will try and politicize each of those events. America may have, in my lifetime, I'd say, has never been so divided as it is now. Join me this time from San Diego, his best-selling author. He's author of the book, Two Tribes, Rebuilding Team America in a Post-Truth World. His second edition has just come out. The book was released in November of 2018, and the second edition was just released this year. Let's welcome Jim Hester. Jim, good to see you.
Good afternoon, Rick. Thanks for having me.
Jim, it's almost like, it's like you predicted the future when you introduced your book in November of 18.
Well, I don't know about that, but I do know that we've always had partisanship in our country. But in the last couple of years, it's become worse. It's become what I call tribalistic. And people are entrenched in their party, and everything is seen through a partisan lens. And since the book was originally released in 2018, I think it's gotten even worse. So, the next 2 months up until the election, I think are going to be really quite a ride. So I'm hopeful that it will all work out without any serious problems or violence, but there's definitely a danger of that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, do you think there's going to be violence, riots, regardless of who wins?
Well, we are a nation of laws. We have a principle of institutions governing, not individual people. But I'm concerned that there will be claims of election malfeasance, and if that occurs, who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah, good point.
Al Gore was never one of my favorite people, but the one thing he did I really admired him for was when he lost that 2000 election, he said, I disagree with the Supreme Court, but I support their decision, and I will abide by it. And I hope that happens this time, that whatever happens, the two candidates will abide by the outcome.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I had forgotten Al Gore had said that, and it's worth remembering. And let's hope each candidate, the losing candidate, says the same thing. You say rebuilding Team America in a post-truth world. How do we rebuild Team America in this crazy, polarizing environment?
That's a good question. It's easy in theory, but it's more complicated in reality, because the problem with tribalism, people see everything almost through a partisan lens, and they can't see their own flaws or the flaws of their leaders, but they think everything the other side does is sinister. So you can't trust anything the other side does because they're horrible people. So in the past, we argued issues on the basis of right and wrong. You're right, or I'm right and you're wrong. That was fine. That's how it should be done. But now it's more like you're evil and you're wicked. And that becomes very dangerous, because then there's emotion and then there's irrationality. And the whole point of my using the word post-truth was facts don't seem to matter as much as they used to, because it's all based on this emotional feeling. You feel that your side is right. You feel the other side is wrong. And therefore, the facts don't really matter. And if facts don't matter, then that creates some serious problems.
It's a great observation, and it's a great point you make. The facts don't matter today. It's what side you're on, as you say. The media...
I believe that sometimes either right or it's wrong, regardless of who says it. So, for example, there's been unrest the last couple of months, protests and some riots, and there's been violence, and it's wrong. Peaceful protests are constitutionally protected, but violence can never be condoned by either side. So if it occurs on the left, it's wrong. If it occurs on the right, it's wrong.
Right.
A 17-year-old in Kenosha killed 2 people, and the president's defending that. That's wrong. And the people who were on the left committed the violence, they're wrong too, and they should be prosecuted. So it's either right or it's wrong. It's not right depending on your party. At least it shouldn't be, in my opinion.
Well, let me ask you about the media, Jim. You know, it seems like in my lifetime that the media was always that unbiased, impartial provider of information. But are they not also leading to the polarization, leading to the two tribes by providing information through an agenda which they may have?
Well, absolutely. When I grew up, we had only a couple of choices to get our news from the major networks. Basically, it was it, Walter Cronkite and his successors. But now there's so many different platforms that basically people fall into a bubble. If you're a conservative, you mainly get your news from Fox. If you're a liberal, you get your news from MSNBC, and you don't trust the other side. So it's a terrible situation that we're in, and it doesn't help when the president tells us the media is the enemy of the people. We have to be able to rely on the media. And right now, nobody trusts the other side's media. The liberals don't trust Fox, and the conservatives don't trust MSNBC. And so I'm not sure what the answer is, but the whole point of my book was that we have to remember that we're on the same team, and you can have different opinions, you can have different conclusions, but you can't choose your own facts. That's one of the main points of my book, is that we have to be able to agree on the facts, and you can have a different conclusion from those facts, but you're not free to choose your own facts. So I'm not sure what the answer is, Rick, but we have to remember that we're on the same team and that we're not enemies of each other.
It's a great message.
That's going to be destructive for everybody.
Yeah, it's a great message, Jim. How do you suppose we got here, where facts are, the facts just depend on what side you're on?
Well, it's been a gradual thing for the last 25 years. There's always been partisanship, but I think this hyperpartisanship began with Bill Clinton, maybe. It's hard to pinpoint exactly. But it's gotten worse in the last couple of years. It's certainly not Donald Trump's fault, but I think he's exacerbated it. He's made a lot of aggressive rhetoric that's responded to by the other side with aggressive rhetoric. And we just need to turn the temperature down a little bit and talk about some of these problems that are facing our I'm very concerned about my children's future. We have a $23 trillion debt. We have climate issues. We have foreign policy issues, and we have to resolve these by working together. And right now, we're not doing that. So, we're also facing a global pandemic, and we can't even agree on the basics of what caused that.
And to make your point, it was just a couple of days ago, the superintendent of Los Angeles County Schools, the largest school district in America, was caught on tape saying that they'll probably reopen the schools after the election. Now, I don't have the context of that whole conversation, but it sounds like the two tribes to me. They've taken an issue and politicized it.
Well, that is probably true. I hadn't heard that, but I know that one of the problems that I see with this pandemic is that the way we've handled it is basically the 50 states are on their own. So there's no unified national policy or plan. And California is fighting against other states, and New York's fighting against other states, and mayors are fighting with governors, and city councilmen are fighting with school districts. So, it's one of the things that we've been lacking is a unified national response to this pandemic. And so we end up with having a partisan lens on how to respond. I never thought that a face mask would be a partisan issue.
Right.
This should be a health issue decided by the science, but for whatever reason that I don't totally understand, it's become a Democrat versus Republican issue. And I think that's just so destructive. So I'm not sure what the short-term solution is. I know what the long-term solution is, but I think, unfortunately, it's going to get worse. When I wrote this book, originally, I started writing in 2017. I was very hopeful. I wrote it with an optimistic tone. But the past couple of years, and especially this past year, things have gotten worse, and I'm concerned about what's going to happen with the election. So I'm hopeful that the rule of law will control and dictate how this is all decided, but I just see a lot of potential for some bad things to happen.
The book is called Two Tribes, Rebuilding Team America in a Post-Truth World. And it reminds us, ladies and gentlemen, that facts are facts. And it's irrelevant as whether you call yourself a conservative or a liberal. That's all beside the point. A fact is a fact. Right is right. Wrong is wrong. Jim Hester, thank you for joining us. Any final comments?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
Any final comments before we move on?
Well, I'd just like to remind people that we're all Americans. We're all on the same team. We all want to make a better world for our children. We may not agree on the details. We may not agree on particular policies. We may have philosophical differences, but we're not each other's enemies. We are a country based on law. We have institutions that have been around for a couple centuries. We need to trust our judiciary. We need to trust our intelligence community. We need to trust our media. We need to trust all our other institutions and our leaders. So right now we're not doing that. And if this country is going to remain the number one power in the world, it needs to work together. If it doesn't, if it splinters, we're going to be relegated to the ash heap of history like all the other powers in the past.
All right. Jim Hester, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to catching up with you again in the future.
Thanks, Rick.
Broadcasting from the Liberatory CPA studios, back with more after this.
Politics and Profits with Rick Amato is brought to you by Liberatory Accounting, the IRS problem solvers. To find out how Liberatory Accounting can help you, call 877-6-SOLVER. That's 877-6-SOLVER.